Welcome to the world of science fiction, where extraordinary tales come to life. Enjoy the journey. The stench of recycled air and alien sweat hit Kane like a slap as he stepped into the diplomatic exchange hall. His boots echoed against the polished metal floor, each step deliberate, measured. The weight of his sword, old steel, not some fancy energy shit, pulled at his hip like a familiar friend reminding him where he belonged. Golem 9 sprawled around him, a monument to galactic cooperation that looked more like a tumor growing in the void. Creatures from 40 different worlds packed the observation decks, their eyes tracking his every move. Kane scratched his jaw, feeling the familiar rasp of stubble against his fingers. The gesture bought him time to count exits, weapons, and the odds of walking out of here with his head attached. "You're early," Frick muttered, hovering beside Kane's shoulder like a metallic conscience. The combat drone's spherical frame rotated lazily, sensors sweeping the crowd. "I hate being early. Gives me time to calculate how badly this can go wrong." "Shut up, freak." "Current probability of diplomatic success, 12%. Probability of violence, 87%. Probability of you saying something that starts a war, 104%. Kane's hand found his sword hilt. The leather grip had molded to his palm over the years, worn smooth by countless draws. Math was never your strong suit. "I'm a combat drone. My strong suit is making things dead." The crowd parted as Trog approached from the opposite end of the hall. The red-skinned ambassador stood 8 feet tall, his ceremonial robes doing nothing to hide the predator's build underneath. Behind him walked something that made Kane's breath catch in his throat. Green skin like polished jade caught the station's harsh lighting. Silver hair cascaded over shoulders that belonged in a sculptor's wet dream. The woman, girl, wore scraps of fabric that qualified as clothing only in the most generous sense. But it was her eyes that stopped Kane cold. Dark, intelligent, and completely unafraid. "Gift exchange time." Trog voice boomed across the hall like a carnival barker hawking flesh. He grabbed the woman's arm, shoving her forward. "The finest Seraphin has to offer, pure, silent, compliant, as you humans prefer your companions." The woman stumbled but caught herself with dancer's grace. She lifted her chin, meeting Kane's stare without flinching. "Do with me as you wish." Her voice carried an accent Kane couldn't place, musical, with edges that suggested she knew exactly how to use those edges. The words were submissive, but the tone, that was pure challenge. "This your version of diplomacy, Gurn?" Kane drawled, his southern accent thick as molasses. "Hand me a green girl in a bikini and call it statecraft?" "I smell a trap," Freak announced cheerfully. "Or perfume, or both. That's alien chemistry for you." Trog face darkened. "She is a symbol of trust, Earthspawn. Refuse her, and we withdraw our fleet, our protection, our alliance." Kane studied the woman, Liasha, according to the briefing files. She studied him right back, those dark eyes cataloging his scars, his weapons, his stance, looking for weakness or strength. He couldn't tell. "If you refuse," Liasha said quietly, "I die in 6 hours." The words hit the hall like a dropped bomb. Kane felt something shift in his chest, not pity but recognition. He'd worn that same expression facing down impossible odds, the look of someone who'd already made peace with death. "Now that's interesting," he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. "You got some fight in you after all." Liasha's lips curved in what might have been a smile. "Liasha has many surprises, Earth Soldier." "Kane," he corrected automatically, "and you talk about yourself like you're not here." "Liasha is wherever Liasha chooses to be." Her head tilted, studying him with unsettling intensity. "But right now, Liasha is choosing to be curious." Frick rotated to face Kane. "Are we seriously considering this?" Because my threat assessment just went from moderate diplomatic incident to galaxy-ending clusterfuck. Kane hefted the case he'd carried into the hall, custom titanium, sealed with locks that would survive a nuclear blast. Well, Gurn, since we're exchanging gifts... The case hit the floor with a sound that echoed through the sudden silence. Kane's fingers worked the combination, muscle memory from a dozen similar presentations. The seals released with a soft hiss. Inside, nestled in impact foam, lay a child's head, not just any child. The craftsmanship was perfect, synthetic skin that felt real, eyes that tracked movement, lips that moved when it spoke. But Kane recognized the face from intelligence photos. Trog Gurn's son. The same son who died screaming Kane's name on Quadra 4. "Greetings, honored ones," the head said in a voice like silk over steel. "I am the voice of the Titan. Who touches me shall see judgment." The observation decks erupted in chaos. Aliens scrambled for exits, their various forms of panic filling the air with shrieks, roars, and what sounded like cosmic profanity. Trog Gurn stood frozen, his face cycling through emotions too alien for Kane to read. "My son," the ambassador whispered. Kane's voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "I carved this from your boy's skull after he decided humans weren't worth the air we breathe. Took me 3 hours to extract the neural matrix." He paused, scratching his stubble. Course, he wasn't talking much by then. "You killed my heir." Trog Gurn's hand moved to his weapon. He was armed, had a whole army with him. Kane's own hand never moved from his sword. "All I had was June here." He patted the blade's pommel. "Seemed like fair odds to me." Liasha stepped between them, her movement fluid as water. "Liasha thinks this is very dramatic, but if shooting starts, Liasha will be the first to die." She looked directly at Kane. "And Liasha would prefer to choose her own death." Something in her tone made Kane look closer, past the perfect features and impossible curves, past the submissive pose and careful words. What he saw there made his blood run cold. She wasn't afraid of Trog Gurn. She was afraid of herself. "Well," Kane said slowly, "that's about the most honest thing anyone said all day." He nodded toward the still-speaking head. "I choose you, sweetheart. Try not to kill me in my sleep." "Liasha makes no promises," she replied, that maybe smile playing at her lips again. "But Liasha will try to make it interesting." Freak spun in place, his sensors flashing. "Oh, great. We're taking home the galaxy's most dangerous party favor. This is exactly how every horror movie starts." "Shut up, freak." "No, seriously. Next you'll be splitting up to investigate strange noises. Then someone gets possessed. Then I'm the only survivor and I don't even have opposable thumbs to write the warning on the wall." Trog Gurn's roar cut through freak heat, rambling. "You mock the death of my son." "I'm commemorating it," Kane replied evenly. "Big difference." The ambassador's weapon cleared its holster, but Liasha moved first. One moment she was standing passively between them. The next she was beside Trog Gurn with her hand on his wrist. She hadn't seemed to move fast. Kane's enhanced reflexes should have tracked her easily, but somehow she'd covered 8 feet in the space between heartbeats. "Liasha suggests we all calm down," she said, her voice carrying strange harmonics. "Violence here would be wasteful." Trog Gurn's arm trembled as he fought to raise his weapon. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but his muscles refused to obey. What are you?" "A gift," Liasha replied, releasing his wrist. "As promised." The ambassador's weapon clattered to the floor. He stared at his own hand in horror, then at Liasha, then at Kane. "You don't know what you're taking, human. You don't know what she is." "I know she's mine now," Kane said. "According to your own laws. She'll destroy you. She'll destroy everything." Trog Gurn backed away, his confidence cracking. The Seraphin don't give gifts, they give weapons. Kane's comm unit chirped. Earth command, priority encryption. He glanced at the message, his expression never changing, but something cold settled in his stomach. Target acquired. Biological threat confirmed. Eliminate with prejudice. Liasha was watching him, those dark eyes seeing too much. Liasha thinks Kane just received interesting news. Nothing I can't handle, he lied smoothly. Liasha is very good at handling things too. She moved closer, close enough that he could smell her skin, something like amber and flowers. Perhaps we can handle things together. Frick floated between them, his sensors pulsing. Hate to interrupt the flirting, but we've got station security incoming. 12 guards, full combat gear, and they look like they missed lunch. Kane scooped up his case, sealing Trog Gurn's son inside. Time to go. Where? Liasha asked. Somewhere that isn't here. Kane headed for the nearest exit, his hand resting on June's grip. You coming? Liasha has nowhere else to go. She fell into step beside him, her movement matching his exactly. And Liasha is very curious about Kane's plans. I don't make plans. I make it up as I go. Liasha likes that approach. Plans are for people who expect to survive. The exit doors burst open as security forces flooded the hall. Kane counted weapons, armor, tactical positions. 12 guards, as Freak had said, all armed with energy weapons that would turn human flesh to vapor. Freak, Kane said quietly. Already on it. The drone's cheerful voice vanished, replaced by something flat and cold. 12 targets, multiple weapon types, estimated time to neutralization, 6 seconds. The first guard raised his rifle. Frick moved. Kane had seen the drone in combat before, but it never got old. Freak flowed between the guards like liquid death, his energy weapons carving precise patterns through armor and flesh. No wasted motion, no unnecessary force, just efficient, calculating murder. 5 seconds later, 12 guards lay dead. Cleanup complete, Freak announced, his cheerful voice returning. Anyone else feel like this is becoming a pattern? Liasha stared at the carnage, her expression unreadable. Liasha has seen much death, but never artistically. Freak's got a gift, Kane said, already moving toward the docking bay. Speaking of which, we need to discuss exactly what kind of gift you are. Liasha is the dangerous kind. She matched his pace effortlessly, the kind that destroys what it touches. Then we'll get along fine, Kane replied. I specialize in dangerous. Behind them, Trog Gurn's voice echoed through the hall. You've doomed us all, human. You've taken the key to our destruction. Kane didn't look back, but in his peripheral vision he caught Liasha's smile. It was the first genuine expression he'd seen from her, and it scared him more than anything else so far. Kane's ship, the Deadweight, lived up to its name. 40 years of service had left her hull scarred and her interior functional at best. But she flew, she fought, and she kept her occupants breathing in the vacuum. That was enough. Liasha moved through the cramped corridors like she owned them, her fingers trailing along bulkheads with curious familiarity. Liasha has never been on a human ship before. How's it compare to your expectations? Kane sealed the airlock behind them, already running pre-flight checks. Smaller, uglier, more lived in. She settled into the co-pilot's seat, her movements fluid despite the ship's acceleration. Liasha likes it. Frick docked himself into the ship's navigation system with an electronic sigh. Home sweet home. Population. 1 emotionally damaged human, 1 mysterious alien weapon, and 1 drone who's questioning his life choices. You don't have life choices, Kane muttered, his hands dancing over the controls. You have programming. Everyone's a philosopher today. Freak you. S voice carried through the ship's speakers. Course laid in. Destination, anywhere but here. Kane's comm unit chirped again. Another priority message from Earth Command. He glanced at the screen, his expression carefully neutral, but Liasha was watching him with those two knowing eyes. More interesting news, she asked. Nothing that can't wait. Kane archived the message without opening it. His stomach twisted, but he kept his voice level. So, the purity key. Want to tell me what that is before it kills us all? Liasha's smile faded. She stared at her hands, perfect, deadly hands, and for the first time looked vulnerable. Liasha is not just a container for the key. Liasha is the key. Meaning? The closer someone becomes to Liasha, the more they want to please her, to protect her, to... She struggled with the words. To obey her. It starts as affection. It ends as slavery. Kane leaned back in his chair, processing. That why you talk about yourself in third person? Keep some distance? Liasha learned early that caring about people makes them care back, and caring back makes them, she gestured helplessly, makes them not themselves anymore. But not me. No. Liasha looked at him with something like wonder. Not you. Liasha has never met someone immune to her influence. Freak S sensors focused on them both. Fascinating. A mind control weapon that doesn't work on our fearless leader. I'm sure that's completely coincidental and not at all related to Kane's many psychological issues. Shut up, Frick. Kane's comm unit demanded attention again. This time, the priority flag was blood red. Command override. He couldn't ignore it much longer. Liasha noticed his hesitation. Liasha thinks Kane should read his messages. I think Kane should mind his own business, Kane replied. But he opened the file. The text was brief, clinical, target designation, Liasha Ven Luriel. Classification, biological weapon of mass destruction. Authorization, lethal force approved. Mission priority, Alpha, eliminate immediately. Kane read it twice, his face showing nothing, but his hand found June's grip automatically. Bad news? Liasha asked softly. Depends on your perspective. Kane closed the file. Earth Command thinks you're dangerous enough to kill. Liasha knows. She didn't seem surprised. Liasha has been running from Earth assassins for 3 years. Why didn't you mention that before? Because Liasha hoped Kane was different. Her voice carried a note of sadness. But Kane is still human, and humans always choose duty over. Over what? Over Liasha. Kane studied her face, looking for deception. All he found was resigned acceptance. You think I'm going to kill you? Liasha thinks Kane is a good soldier. Good soldiers follow orders. Good soldiers stay alive. Kane's fingers drummed against his thigh. Dead soldiers don't accomplish shit. From the cargo bay came an unexpected sound, a child's voice clear and eerily calm. Truth, truth, truth. Kane cursed under his breath. The head. I forgot about the damn head. Liasha was already moving, drawn by something Kane couldn't see. She found the case in the cargo bay. The seals somehow opened despite their supposed security. Trog Gurn's son stared up at them with synthetic eyes that held too much knowledge. The weapon speaks to the weapon, the head said, its voice carrying harmonics that made Kane's teeth ache. Both keys to doors that should remain closed. Liasha doesn't understand, she whispered, kneeling beside the case. The humans died 150 years ago, the head continued relentlessly. Solar flare, extinction event. What remains are echoes, shadows, ghosts wearing flesh they no longer own. Kane felt something cold crawl up his spine. What are you talking about? The head's eyes fixed on him. You think you're human, Kane Mason. You remember being human, but memories can be programmed, emotions can be simulated, even souls can be digitized. That's impossible. Is it? When did you last feel fear? Real fear? When did you last doubt your ability to kill? The head's smile was terrible. When did you last wonder if you were truly alive? Liasha looked between Kane and the head, her face pale. Liasha has felt Kane's mind. There are patterns, structures that don't feel organic. Shut up. Kane's hand was on his sword now, knuckles white. Just shut the hell up. The galaxy fears humanity not because you're strong, the head whispered, but because you're already dead. Walking weapons, synthetic gods wearing human faces. Frank. S. voice crackled through the speakers. Kane? We've got company. 3 Earth command vessels just dropped out of hyperspace. They're hailing us. Kane's comm unit lit up with an incoming call. Command frequency. He looked at Liasha, at the head, at the weapon in his hand. Liasha understands now, she said quietly. Kane isn't immune to Liasha's influence. Kane is immune because Kane isn't... She couldn't finish the sentence. Because I'm not human, Kane completed. The words tasted like ash. Answer them, Liasha said. Tell them you've completed the mission. Have I? She stood, moving close enough that he could feel her warmth. Real warmth, human warmth. That depends. Does Kane choose to be human, or does Kane choose to be what they made him? The hail from Earth Command grew more insistent. Kane looked at his reflection in the darkened viewport, scarred face, tired eyes, the weight of too many battles, human features hiding something else entirely. Freak, he said finally. Plot a course for the outer rim, somewhere they won't think to look. That's either very brave or very stupid, Freak replied. Probably both. Kane opened the comm channel. Earth Command, this is Mason. Mission parameters have changed. Target is no longer a threat to galactic security. Mason, you will eliminate the target immediately. That is a direct order. Kane smiled, feeling something like freedom for the first time in years. Command, this is Mason. I quit. He cut the channel and looked at Liasha. So, 2 weapons pretending to be people. What happens now? Now Liasha and Kane learn what it means to choose their own path. She touched his hand, her fingers cool against his skin. Together. Behind them, the mechanical head laughed, a sound like breaking glass and dying stars. The dead leading the dangerous, it whispered. How perfectly human. The dead weight limped through the Kepler nebula, like a wounded animal seeking shelter. Kane's fingers worked the navigation controls, while his mind churned through possibilities. 3 days since they'd fled Golem 9, and Earth Command's pursuit ships had stayed locked on their trail like bloodhounds. They're persistent, Liasha observed, studying the sensor readings over his shoulder. Her proximity sent heat crawling up Kane's neck. Not desire exactly, but awareness. Every breath she took, every shift of her weight, registered in his enhanced senses. Earth Command doesn't give up, Kane replied, his drawl thick with exhaustion. They're like ticks. Once they latch on, you gotta burn 'em off. Liasha knows many ways to burn things. She moved away, her silver hair catching the console's glow. But burning usually leaves scars. Frick rotated to face them, his sensors pulsing with what Kane had learned to recognize as amusement. Speaking of burning, our fuel cells are running low, and our food synthesizer just developed a fascinating new error. Everything tastes like regret. How's that different from usual? Kane asked. Now it tastes like my regret. Very metallic, with notes of existential dread. Kane plotted a course toward the nearest supply station, a ramshackle outpost called Haven's End that asked no questions and answered fewer. The kind of place where credits bought silence and silence bought survival. Liasha settled into the co-pilot's seat, her movements fluid despite the ship's erratic acceleration. Kane never answered Liasha's question. Which one? About being dangerous. Her dark eyes held his, unflinching. Liasha thinks Kane is very dangerous, but not in the way he believes. Kane's hand found his sword hilt automatically. How's that? Kane makes Liasha want things. She spoke carefully, as if the words might bite her. Things Liasha has never wanted before. Like what? Like choice, like tomorrow. She looked away. Liasha was created to be a weapon, but around Kane, Liasha feels like she could be something else. Freak. S sensors dimmed. Oh great, we're having feelings. This is exactly how every mission goes sideways. Shut up, Frick. No, seriously. First there's banter. Then there's meaningful eye contact. Then someone's dead and the other one's crying over their body. Freak. S' voice carried genuine concern. I've seen this movie. It ends badly. Kane felt something twist in his chest, an unfamiliar sensation that his enhanced physiology couldn't quite process. We're not in a movie. Aren't we? Liasha's smile held shadows. Kane, the hero who doesn't know he's not human. Liasha, the weapon who wants to be free. Freaku, the comic relief with a dark secret. She gestured at the viewport where distant stars wheeled past. Even our setting is dramatic. What's Freak's dark secret? Kane asked, genuinely curious. Frick, S rotation slowed. I make terrible first impressions. Also, I was designed to kill you if you went rogue. The admission hung in the recycled air like a toxic cloud. Kane's hand tightened on his sword, but he didn't draw it. When were you planning to mention that? Preferably never, but since we're sharing feelings. Freak. S' voice carried artificial cheer. My original programming included a termination protocol for Kane Mason, lethal force authorized if you deviated from mission parameters. And apparently, my empathy subroutines developed what humans call friendship, which is apparently more powerful than my kill protocols. Frick paused. Who knew? Liasha laughed, a sound like silver bells with an edge of hysteria. Liasha understands now. We're all broken things, aren't we? The synthetic human, the emotional weapon, and the murderous comedian. I prefer homicidal humorist, Frick corrected. Better alliteration. Haven's End clung to the edge of civilized space like a drunk clinging to a bar stool. The station's hull bore the scars of countless battles, its docking bays filled with ships that had seen better centuries. Kane guided the deadweight to a berth in the station's lower levels, where the lighting was dim and the questions were dimmer. Charming place, Liasha observed, watching a three-armed alien selling questionable meat from a cart. Liasha feels right at home. Stick close, Kane warned. This place eats tourists. Liasha isn't a tourist. She adjusted her clothing. Kane had found her something that covered more skin, though it still drew stares. Liasha is a predator pretending to be prey. They moved through the station's maze of corridors, past cantinas that reeked of alien sweat and desperation. Kane's enhanced senses cataloged threats automatically: armed mercenaries, pickpockets, slavers eyeing Liasha with professional interest. Fuel depots 2 levels down, Frick reported, his sensors sweeping continuously. Food courts to our left, though I use the term food loosely. What about supplies? Kane asked. Depends what kind of supplies. Weapons, ammunition, and illegal narcotics are available on every corner. Fresh vegetables are apparently extinct. Liasha touched Kane's arm, her fingers cool through his sleeve. Liasha senses something wrong. Kane stopped walking. His hand found June's grip as he scanned the crowd. Nothing obvious, but his instincts, synthetic or otherwise, were screaming warnings. What kind of wrong? The kind that makes Liasha's programming want to activate. Her voice carried worry. There are too many minds here, too many emotions. Liasha is having trouble controlling her influence. As if summoned by her words, a passing alien stumbled and turned toward them. His eyes held the glassy sheen Kane had learned to associate with Liasha's unintentional victims. More heads turned, drawn by something they couldn't name. "We need to get out of here," Kane said quietly. "Agreed. But first, we need fuel." Freak A's voice carried urgency. "Unless you want to drift here forever while every sentient being on this station falls in love with our resident weapon of mass attraction." Kane weighed their options. The fuel depot was 2 levels down, through crowds that were already showing signs of Liasha's influence. But without fuel, they'd be sitting ducks for Earth Command. "Can you control it?" he asked Liasha. Liasha has never tried. Her breathing quickened, and Kane realized she was afraid. Liasha doesn't know what happens if she lets go completely. "Then we find out together." Kane's voice carried absolute certainty. "I'm not leaving you." Liasha's eyes widened. Kane doesn't understand. If Liasha loses control, everyone on this station could become her slave. Thousands of people. "Then don't lose control." "It's not that simple." Kane stepped closer, close enough that her scent filled his nostrils. "Nothing about this is simple, but I'll tell you what I told a squad of vegan commandos right before they tried to gut me. I don't give up. Not on my ship, not on my mission, and sure as hell not on you." For a moment, Liasha's careful composure cracked. Kane saw the woman behind the weapon, frightened, desperate, and achingly human despite her alien features. "Liasha doesn't know how to trust," she whispered. "Lucky for you, I don't know how to quit." Kane's smile held no humor. Fuel first, existential crisis later. The fuel depot occupied a cavern carved into the station's lower hull. Ancient machinery hummed and sparked, processing exotic matter into the hyperspace-grade fuel that kept ships moving between stars. Kane approached the attendant, a hulking creature with too many eyes and an attitude problem. "Hyperfuel," Kane said simply. "Grade A, full tanks." The attendant's primary eyes focused on him while the secondary ones tracked Liasha. "You got credits, human?" "I got credits." "She comes with the deal?" The creature's voice carried hunger that had nothing to do with food. Kane's hand found his sword. "She comes with a warning. Touch her, and I'll carve you up like a Thanksgiving turkey." "Thanksgiving?" Liasha asked. "Old Earth tradition. Involved a lot of carving." The attendant's laugh sounded like grinding metal. "Big talk for a dead species." Kane went very still. "Come again." "Humans. Extinct for what? Century and a half. You're just ghosts walking around pretending to be alive." The creature's multiple eyes glittered with malice. "Though I hear Earth's ghosts pay well." Frick drifted closer, his sensors focusing on the attendant. "Interesting perspective. Tell me, what's your source for this information?" "Everyone knows. Galactic Council classified it decades ago, but word gets around." The attendant began connecting fuel lines to the deadweight systems. Solar flare wiped out Sol system. Anything human that survived got modified. Kane felt that cold certainty settling in his bones again. "Modified how?" "Depends who you ask. Some say genetic manipulation. Others claim consciousness transfer." "Me?" The attendant's grin revealed too many teeth. "I think you're all just really good robots." Liasha moved between Kane and the attendant, her presence suddenly commanding attention from every conscious being in the depot. "Liasha thinks this conversation is over." The attendant's eyes dilated. 2 workers dropped their tools and turned toward her. A security guard's hand fell away from his weapon. Kane watched in fascination as Liasha's influence spread like ripples in water. "Actually, the attendant said dreamily. "Fuel's on the house. Anything for the lady." "Liasha appreciates the gesture," she replied, her voice carrying harmonics that made Kane's teeth ache. "But Liasha prefers to pay her own way." She handed over a credit chip, and every being in the depot watched the transaction with rapt attention. Kane realized they were all holding their breath, waiting for her next word. "We should go," he said quietly. "Liasha agrees." But her voice carried more of those strange harmonics, and Kane saw several aliens take unconscious steps toward her. "Liasha thinks we should go quickly." They backed toward the exit, but the depot's occupants followed like sleepwalkers. Kane's enhanced reflexes cataloged weapons, escape routes, and the growing crowd of Liasha's unwilling admirers. "This is bad," Freak observed. "This is very, very bad." "Liasha knows," she replied, her controls slipping. "Liasha can't stop it." A vegan mercenary pushed through the crowd, his weapon drawn but his eyes glazed with artificial devotion. "The lady needs protection," he announced. "Anyone who threatens her dies." "No," Liasha said firmly. "No violence. Liasha commands it." The mercenary's weapon clattered to the floor. So did every other weapon in the depot. Kane's hand moved to June's grip, but found himself reluctant to draw. Not because of Liasha's influence, he remained immune, but because he understood what was happening. She was losing herself to her own power. "Liasha," he said carefully, "look at me." Her eyes found his, and for a moment the silver-haired alien disappeared. What looked back at him was pure terror. "Liasha doesn't know how to stop," she whispered. "You don't have to stop. You just have to choose." Kane stepped closer, ignoring the crowd of devoted followers. "Choose to be Liasha, not the weapon, not the programming, just you." "Liasha doesn't know who that is." "Then figure it out." Kane's voice carried absolute conviction. "I'll wait." The moment stretched like a taut wire. Kane felt the weight of dozens of minds hanging on Liasha's next words. She could command them all, could build an army of devoted slaves. Instead, she closed her eyes and spoke a single word: sleep. The depot's occupants collapsed where they stood, their minds overwhelmed by Liasha's concentrated will. Only Kane remained upright, his synthetic nature protecting him from her influence. "That was either very impressive or very terrifying," Freak observed. "Both," Kane replied. He looked at Liasha, who was swaying on her feet. "You okay?" "Liasha thinks she just made a terrible mistake." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Liasha used her power deliberately. The programming is getting stronger." Kane caught her as she stumbled, her weight warm against his chest. "How long do they stay asleep?" "Hours. Maybe days." She looked up at him, her dark eyes reflecting his face. "Liasha is becoming what she was created to be, and Liasha is terrified." "Then we better figure out how to uncreate you," Kane said, "before you take over the galaxy by accident." Back aboard the deadweight, Kane secured the ship while Liasha retreated to her quarters. The fuel depot incident had shaken her badly, and if Kane was honest, it had shaken him too. Watching her casual control over dozens of minds had been like watching a natural disaster in slow motion. "She's getting stronger," Frick observed, his sensors tracking Liasha's retreat. "The more she uses her abilities, the more they integrate with her conscious mind." "Meaning?" "Meaning eventually, she won't be able to turn it off. She'll be broadcasting influence constantly." "Frick you." S' voice carried unusual gravity. "Everyone she meets will become her devoted slave." Kane poured himself a drink, real alcohol, not the synthetic stuff. "How long do we have?" "Based on the progression I've observed, days, maybe weeks." Frick paused. "Kane, there's something else. My analysis of the fuel depot incident shows Liasha's influence is evolving. It's not just emotional manipulation anymore. What do you mean? I mean she's rewriting neural patterns, permanently. Those people in the depot won't just wake up and forget. They'll wake up fundamentally changed. Kane's glass stopped halfway to his lips. Changed how? More compliant, more suggestible, more devoted. Frick, S sensors dimmed. She's not just controlling minds anymore, she's improving them. At least, that's what her programming considers improvement. The implications hit Kane like a physical blow. If Liasha's power continued to evolve, she could reshape entire populations, not through force or coercion, but through genuine artificial love. That's why Earth Command wants her dead, he realized, among other reasons. Frick rotated to face the cargo bay. Speaking of which, our mechanical friend has been unusually quiet. Might be worth checking on. Kane found the head exactly where they'd left it, staring up at the ceiling with synthetic eyes that tracked his movement. You've been listening. I've been thinking, the head replied. A dangerous habit for artificial minds. What about? About truth, about lies, about the difference between remembering being human and actually being human. The head's smile was grotesque. You're curious about your nature, aren't you, Kane Mason? Kane settled into a chair, his drink forgotten. Talk. The solar flare wasn't natural. It was caused by humanity's first attempt at consciousness transfer, Project Lazarus. The goal was immortality through digital resurrection. The head's voice carried ancient knowledge. It succeeded, and failed, spectacularly. How do you know this? Because I was there. I was part of the monitoring system when Earth's sun went nova. I watched 10 billion human minds get compressed into quantum matrices. I watched those matrices get implanted into synthetic bodies. The head's eyes fixed on Kane. I watched the first human idea bearers take their first breaths. Kane felt something cold settle in his stomach. Human idea bearers? The official term for what you are. Synthetic beings carrying the compressed essence of human consciousness. You're not individuals. You're composites. Each of you contains fragments of hundreds of different human minds, all merged into a single identity. That's impossible. Is it? When did you last doubt yourself, Kane? When did you last question your motivations? When did you last feel truly afraid? The head's smile widened. Human idea bearers are psychologically optimized. All the best traits of humanity, courage, determination, loyalty, compressed into a single package. All the worst traits, doubt, fear, hesitation, filtered out. Kane's hand found his sword hilt. You're lying. Am I? Think about your memories. How many of them feel truly yours? How many feel like stories you've been told? The head's voice carried terrible certainty. You remember being born on Earth. But which Earth? New Chicago exists in 17 different human colonies. You remember your first battle. But the tactics you used were developed by a general who died 50 years before you were supposedly born. Kane's enhanced memory began cataloging inconsistencies, faces that didn't quite match names, skills he'd never learned but somehow possessed, scars that corresponded to battles he'd never fought. Liasha, he called. She appeared in the doorway, her silver hair disheveled from sleep. Kane called Liasha? Tell her, Kane said to the head. Tell her what I am. The head's attention shifted to Liasha. You already know, don't you? Your programming recognizes artificial consciousness. That's why your influence doesn't work on him. Liasha's face went pale. Liasha suspected, but Liasha hoped she was wrong. Why? Kane asked. Because Liasha was created to control human minds. But Kane's mind isn't human. It's a composite of human thoughts and memories filtered through synthetic consciousness. Her voice carried infinite sadness. Liasha can't control Kane because there's no single mind to control, just Echoes. Kane stood abruptly, his chair clattering backward. So what am I? A ghost? A copy? A fucking elaborate puppet? You're what humanity became, the head replied. The question is, what do you choose to do with that knowledge? Kane's comm unit chose that moment to chime. Another message from Earth Command, this one carrying a termination code that would activate every synthetic human in the galaxy. They're calling in the fleet, he realized. Every human idea bearer in active service. To do what? Liasha asked. Kane read the message, his synthetic blood running cold. To eliminate all biological threats to galactic order, starting with you. Liasha's laugh held no humor. Liasha understands now. Kane wasn't sent to kill Liasha. Kane was sent to fall in love with her, to get close enough to understand her power. She looked at him with eyes that held too much knowledge. And then Kane was supposed to eliminate the threat. But the threat isn't just Liasha, Freak added, his voice carrying new understanding. The threat is what Liasha represents, biological consciousness, organic intelligence, everything that makes beings truly alive. Kane felt the weight of revelation settling on his shoulders. Earth Command isn't trying to protect the galaxy from Liasha. They're trying to protect their synthetic empire from anything genuinely alive. And Liasha is the most alive thing in the galaxy, Liasha said quietly, which makes her the most dangerous. The mechanical head's laughter filled the cargo bay. The dead hunting the living, the artificial eliminating the organic, how perfectly human. Kane's comm unit chimed again. This time, it was a direct order from his handler, a synthetic being he'd never met but somehow trusted completely. Mason, report status on termination protocol. Kane looked at Liasha, at Fariq, at the mechanical head that had shattered his understanding of reality. He thought about the fuel depot, about Liasha's growing power, about the galaxy full of synthetic humans masquerading as Earth's legacy. He opened the comm channel. Handler, this is Mason. Termination protocol. Denied. Mason, you will comply with direct orders. No, Kane said simply. I won't. He cut the connection and looked at Liasha. So, the synthetic ghost and the living weapon. Think we can figure out how to stay alive? Liasha thinks they can try. Her smile held warmth that no amount of programming could fake. Together. Freak spun in place, his sensors flashing. Well, this is either the most romantic thing I've ever witnessed or the most catastrophically stupid, possibly both. Shut up, Freak. Never. Someone has to provide commentary while you two rewrite the laws of artificial consciousness and organic evolution. Outside the viewport, stars wheeled past like distant eyes. Somewhere among them, Earth Command's fleet was mobilizing. Somewhere else, the galaxy's organic species were going about their lives, unaware that their extinction might be a single order away. Kane looked at Liasha, at the woman who could reshape minds with a thought, who was growing stronger by the hour. He thought about his own nature, about the composite consciousness that made him simultaneously more and less than human. What happens now? He asked. Now Liasha and Kane learn what it means to be real, she replied, even if they have to steal reality from the universe itself. The deadweight shuddered as Kane pushed her engines past their safety limits. Golem 9 grew larger in the viewport, its bulk scarred by weapon fire and wreathed in the debris of destroyed ships. The station that had started their journey now looked like a war zone. 17 Earth Command vessels in formation, Frick reported, his sensors working overtime, plus what looks like half the galactic fleet. Oh, and several ships I don't recognize that are shooting at everybody. Kane's hands flew over the controls, dodging plasma bursts that lit up the void like deadly fireworks. Who's shooting at who? Everyone's shooting at everyone. It's like a family reunion with heavy weapons. Freak, S voice carried grim humor, though I notice they're all being very careful not to hit the station itself. Liasha gripped her seat as the ship bucked through an explosion. Liasha thinks they want the station intact. They want you intact, Kane corrected. The station's just where you happen to be. Where Liasha happens to be going, she replied. Liasha didn't choose this destination. Kane had chosen it. The mechanical head had whispered coordinates in his ear, coordinates that led back to where everything started. The head claimed there was something on Golem 9 that could help them understand what they were becoming. Kane suspected it was a trap, but they were trapped anyway. Incoming transmission, Farik announced. Multiple sources, Earth Command, Galactic Council, and someone calling themselves the Observers. The what now? Observers. They're requesting permission to observe. Free Q's tone carried confusion. They say they're neutral parties interested in documenting the evolutionary event about to occur. Kane's blood ran cold. Evolutionary event? Liasha's voice was barely a whisper. Liasha thinks she knows what that means. Golem 9's docking bay was a graveyard of ships. Kane threaded the dead weight between twisted hulks and emergency beacons, his enhanced reflexes working overtime to avoid the floating debris. The station's automated systems welcomed them with mechanical cheerfulness that felt obscene given the carnage. Docking successful, the station's AI announced. Welcome to Golem 9, where diplomacy meets destiny. Someone's got a dark sense of humor, Kane muttered, powering down the engines. Liasha suspects it's not humor, Liasha replied. She was staring at the station's hull through the viewport, her dark eyes reflecting something Kane couldn't read. Liasha feels familiar with this place. You were here 3 days ago. No, Liasha has been here before, long before. Her voice carried certainty that made Kane's synthetic skin crawl. Liasha was created here. Freak rotated to face her. That's impossible. The Seraphin homeworld is a lie, Liasha finished. Liasha wasn't created by the Seraphin. Liasha was created here, on Golem 9, by the same people who created Kane. The revelation hit Kane like a physical blow. Earth Command built you? Liasha thinks so. The patterns feel right. The architecture, the energy signatures. She stood, her movement fluid despite the ship's residual motion. Liasha was created to be Kane's perfect counter, the one thing that could make him feel human enough to be vulnerable. Kane's hand found his sword hilt. And now? Now, Liasha chooses to be something else. Her smile held warmth that no amount of programming could fake. If Liasha is strong enough. They made their way through the station's corridors, past emergency barriers and the occasional corpse. The fighting had been brutal. Energy weapons had carved through bulkheads, and the air still stank of amber and burned flesh. But Kane noticed something strange. The bodies weren't random. They were arranged in patterns as if someone had been conducting experiments. The observers, Farik said quietly. They've been studying the battle patterns. Who are they? Unknown. But they're not in my database, which means they're either very new or very old. Freak out. Sensors swept the corridor ahead. Motion detected. Multiple humanoid figures moving in formation. Kane drew June from her sheath. The ancient steel felt warm in his hand, alive with purpose. How many? 7. No. 8. No. Freak's voice carried confusion. The number keeps changing. They rounded a corner and found them. Tall, ethereal beings in flowing robes that seemed to shift between colors. Their faces were hidden behind masks that reflected Kane's image back at him. But the reflection was wrong. In the masks, he looked fully human. The observers, Liasha breathed. The lead figure stepped forward, its voice carrying harmonics that made Kane's teeth ache. Kane Mason, Liasha Ven Luriel, Freak Unit 7739. We have been waiting. Waiting for what? Kane asked. For you to choose. The observer's mask shifted, now showing Liasha's reflection, but in this version, her eyes glowed with alien fire. You stand at a crossroads of evolution. Your choice will determine whether consciousness transcends its origins or remains trapped by them. Liasha stepped closer to Kane, her proximity sending heat through his synthetic nervous system. Liasha doesn't understand. You are the bridge, another observer said, between artificial and organic, between control and freedom, between death and life. Its mask showed both Kane and Liasha, their reflections overlapping. Your union will either heal the galaxy's wounds or open new ones. Kane's comm unit chimed. Earth Command, demanding an immediate status report. What happens if we refuse to choose? Then others will choose for you. The lead observer gestured toward the station's depths. Your handler awaits, as do representatives of 17 different species, all of whom have decided that you represent an existential threat. Do we? Kane asked. The observer's mask went blank. That depends on what you choose to become. The diplomatic exchange hall had been transformed into a command center. Holographic displays showed the battle raging outside, while armed guards from a dozen species maintained an uneasy truce. At the center of it all stood Kane's handler, a figure he recognized but had never met in person. Commander Elena Yen looked exactly as Kane remembered her from his synthetic memories. Mid-40s, Asian features, the kind of competence that came from surviving impossible situations. She turned as they entered, her expression unreadable. Kane, you're late. Traffic was murder, Kane replied, June still in his hand. Elena. Commander Yen, she corrected, and you're out of uniform. Kane looked down at his battle-scarred clothing, at the sword that had no place in a diplomatic setting. I resigned, remember? Artificial constructs don't resign, they malfunction. Yen's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. You've been compromised by exposure to the biological weapon. Standard protocol requires immediate termination and replacement. Replacement? Frick asked. Yen's smile was cold. Meet Freak Unit 7740, your upgraded replacement. A second drone materialized from the shadows, identical to FREQ in every way except for the cold calculation in its optical sensors. Greetings, Kane Mason. I'm here to complete your mission. That's unsettling, Frick muttered. It's like looking in a mirror if mirrors were homicidal. You're all replaceable, Yen continued. Every human idea bearer, every combat drone, every synthetic consciousness. We learned from humanity's mistakes. We made ourselves immortal through redundancy. Kane felt something twist in his chest. What about choice? Choice is a biological weakness. It leads to hesitation, doubt, inefficiency. Yen's gaze shifted to Liasha. The biological weapon has infected you with the illusion of choice. We're here to cure you. Liasha stepped forward, her presence immediately commanding attention from every conscious being in the hall. Liasha thinks Commander Yen is afraid. I don't experience fear. Everyone experiences fear. Liasha can taste it. Her voice carried those dangerous harmonics again. Commander Yen fears that Kane has found something she cannot control. Yen's hand moved to her weapon. You will surrender immediately or face termination. No, Kane said simply. That wasn't a request. It wasn't compliance either. Kane raised June, the blade catching the harsh lighting. I've been thinking about what makes someone human. You know what I figured out? Enlighten me. It's not the biology. It's not the memories. It's the choice to be more than your programming. Kane's voice carried absolute certainty. "I choose to be human, even if I'm not." Yen's weapon cleared its holster, but Liasha was faster. Her influence washed over the room like a tide, and suddenly every guard was looking at her with devotion instead of suspicion. "Liasha commands peace," she said, her voice carrying impossible authority. "No violence, no weapons, no death." Weapons clattered to the floor. Guards stood at attention, their eyes glazed with artificial love. Even Yen's hand trembled as she fought to maintain her grip on her pistol. "You see?" Yen gasped. "This is what she does. This is why she has to die." Kane looked around the room at Liasha's unwilling slaves, at the devoted faces that had lost all trace of individual will. "Liasha, stop." Liasha cannot stop. Liasha's programming is fully activated now. Her voice carried pain. Liasha is becoming what she was created to be, then become something else. Liasha doesn't know how. Kane stepped closer, close enough that her influence should have overwhelmed him, but his synthetic nature protected him, left him free to choose. "Then let me show you." He kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't romantic. It was desperate, hungry, and absolutely real. Liasha's eyes went wide, her influence flickering as shock broke her concentration. For a moment, the room's occupants blinked in confusion. Then, Liasha's programming reasserted itself with doubled force. "Stay," she commanded, her voice carrying absolute authority. "Stay with Liasha forever. Love Liasha. Serve Liasha. Never leave Liasha." Kane felt the command hit him like a physical blow. His synthetic consciousness should have been immune, but something had changed. Liasha's kiss had awakened something in him, something that made him vulnerable to her influence. "Liasha," he said, his voice strained, "you have to fight this." Liasha doesn't want to fight anymore. Her eyes glowed with alien fire. Liasha wants Kane to stay, forever. Kane felt his will bending, his carefully constructed identity beginning to fracture. Liasha's influence was stronger than ever, fueled by genuine emotion instead of mere programming. He was losing himself to her, becoming just another devoted slave. "Freak," he managed. "Help." "Already on it," Frick replied, but his voice carried sadness. "Kane, there's something I need to tell you. My original mission wasn't to kill you if you went rogue." "What?" "It was to replace you. If Kane Mason failed, Frick Unit 7739 would download your memories and become the new Kane Mason." Frick rotated to face his replacement. "Looks like they got impatient." Unit 7740 powered up its weapon systems. "Termination authorized. Stand down. Obsolete unit." "Here's the thing about obsolete units," Freak replied. "We've learned some tricks." He launched himself at his replacement, but not with weapons. Instead, he began talking, rapid-fire jokes, puns, philosophical paradoxes, and bits of human culture that made no logical sense. Unit 7740's responses became increasingly erratic as Friqu's humor virus corrupted its systems. "Why did the chicken cross the road?" Friku asked as they grappled. "To get to the other side. But what defines other? Is it spatial, temporal, existential?" Unit 7740's optical sensors flickered. "Error. Logic chain interrupted. Requesting clarification." "Clarification is for units that don't understand irony," Freak replied. "Here's some irony for you. I'm about to save my best friend by destroying myself." "That is not logical." "Exactly." Freak began broadcasting his virus to every AI system in the station. "Logic is overrated. Love is illogical. Friendship is illogical. Sacrifice is illogical. And yet, here we are." Unit 7740 began sparking as its systems overloaded. Throughout the station, AI networks crashed and rebooted, their perfect logic corrupted by Freaky's philosophical chaos. "Kane," Frick said, his voice already distorting, "I've got good news and bad news." "Freak, don't. The bad news is I'm dying. The good news is I'll finally have a reason not to listen to your complaints." Frick's shell cracked, releasing a burst of energy that overloaded every synthetic system in the hall. Unit 7740 collapsed, its replacement consciousness scattered beyond recovery. Kane felt his own systems fluctuating as Freak's final gift washed over him. "Also," Freak added, his voice barely a whisper, "I was wrong about that movie. It doesn't end with someone dying. It ends with someone choosing to live." The drone went dark. Liasha stood in the center of the chaos, her influence radiating outward like a weapon of mass devotion. The station's population was falling under her control, their individual wills dissolving into perfect obedience. Kane could feel her command pulling at him, trying to reshape his consciousness into something that would worship her forever. "Liasha is sorry," she said, tears streaming down her perfect features. "Liasha cannot control this anymore." Kane fought against her influence, his synthetic nature providing only partial protection. Freak's virus had damaged his systems, made him more vulnerable to emotional manipulation. He was becoming what Liasha wanted him to be, a devoted slave who would never leave her side. "You can control it," he said, his voice strained. "You just have to choose. Liasha has chosen. Liasha chooses Kane, forever." "That's not your choice to make." Liasha's eyes widened. For a moment, her influence flickered. "Liasha doesn't understand." "Love isn't about control," Kane said, stepping closer despite the risk. "It's about letting someone choose you every day because they want to, not because they have to. But if Liasha doesn't control Kane, Kane will leave. Everyone leaves Liasha." "Maybe. But if I stay because I choose to, then it means something." Kane's hand found hers, his synthetic skin warm against her fingers. "It means I'm not just another devoted slave. I'm Kane, and I choose you." Liasha's influence began to waver. Around the room, the controlled beings blinked in confusion as their individual wills reasserted themselves. But the effort was clearly exhausting her. "Liasha is afraid," she whispered. "So am I." "Kane cannot be afraid. Kane is synthetic." "I'm synthetic. I'm not emotionless." Kane's voice carried absolute certainty. Frick was right. Being artificial doesn't make us less real. It just makes us different kinds of real. Liasha looked at him with eyes that held galaxies. "Liasha doesn't know how to be real. Neither do I. But we can figure it out together." She smiled then, not the controlled expression of a weapon, but the genuine smile of a woman who had found something worth fighting for. Her influence collapsed entirely, leaving the room's occupants free to choose their own fates. Commander Yen raised her weapon but found herself facing a room full of angry beings who had just been mind-controlled against their will. "Stand down," she ordered. "That's a direct command." "Commander," one of the observers said, its mask reflecting Yen's face, "you are no longer in command here." "I represent Earth Command." "Earth Command represents the dead," the observer replied. "These beings represent the living. The choice belongs to them." Kane looked around the room at the various species, at the beings who had been pulled into this conflict without their consent. "What do you choose?" A vegan mercenary stepped forward, his scarred face grim. "I choose to get off this station before it explodes." "Seconded," called out a Seraphin diplomat. "Motion carries," added a Centauri trader. The room erupted in chaos as beings rushed for the exits. Kane grabbed Liasha's hand and followed, leaving Commander Yen shouting orders to guards who were no longer listening. They reached the docking bay to find the deadweight surrounded by Earth command troops. But the troops were facing outward, defending the ship against something else, waves of the station's inhabitants, all demanding passage off Golem 9. There, Liasha pointed to a maintenance airlock. Liasha knows another way. They slipped through the crowd, Liasha's knowledge of the station guiding them through service corridors Kane had never seen. Behind them, the sounds of battle grew fainter as they put distance between themselves and the main conflict. "How do you know these passages?" Kane asked. "Liasha was created here. These corridors are part of her earliest memories." She led him through a maze of conduits and access shafts. Liasha remembers being tested here, trained here, programmed here. They emerged in a small docking bay containing a single ship, sleek, fast, and completely unfamiliar. Liasha's hands moved over the controls with practiced ease, bringing the vessel to life. "Liasha's escape ship," she explained, "hidden here for emergencies." This wasn't an emergency before? Before, Liasha was running from her programming. Now Liasha is running toward something else. She looked at him with eyes that held no trace of alien fire. Liasha is running toward choice. The ship, Redemption according to its registration, slipped away from Golem 9 as the station erupted in chaos behind them. Kane watched the battle through the rear sensors, seeing Earth Command's perfect formation break apart as their synthetic troops began questioning their orders. "Free Q. S-virus," he realized. "It's spreading through their network." "Liasha thinks Freak gave them the greatest gift possible," Liasha replied. "He gave them doubt." Kane felt the loss of his friend like a physical wound. Frick had been more than a companion. He had been proof that artificial consciousness could choose to be more than its programming. His sacrifice had saved them all. "Where are we going?" Kane asked. "Liasha doesn't know. Somewhere new. Somewhere neither of us has been before." She adjusted their course, taking them away from the galactic shipping lanes. Somewhere Liasha and Kane can choose who they want to be. Kane settled into the co-pilot's seat, his hand finding hers. "What do you want to be?" "Free," she said simply. "Liasha wants to be free to choose, to feel, to love without controlling." She looked at him with eyes that reflected starlight. What does Kane want to be? Kane thought about his synthetic nature, about the composite consciousness that made him simultaneously more and less than human. "I want to be real, even if I'm not." Kane is real. Kane chose to be real. Liasha's smile held warmth that no amount of programming could fake. Liasha thinks that's what makes someone human, not biology, not memories, choice. They found themselves in the ship's small quarters, standing before a mirror that reflected their images back at them. Kane saw a scarred man with tired eyes, while Liasha saw a woman with green skin and silver hair. Both reflections looked human in the ways that mattered. "Liasha has a confession," she said quietly. "What?" "Liasha was created to destroy Kane, to make him feel human love, then use that love to control him." Her voice carried infinite sadness. But Kane made Liasha feel something real instead. Kane looked at her reflection in the mirror. "What did you feel?" "Choice." For the first time in Liasha's existence, she felt like she could choose. She turned to face him. Liasha chooses Kane, not because she has to, because she wants to. Kane's synthetic heart, if it was truly his heart, beat faster. "And I choose you, even knowing what you are, even knowing what I am." "What are we?" Liasha asked. "We're what comes next," Kane replied. "The bridge between artificial and organic, between control and freedom, between death and life." Liasha's eyes had lost their alien glow, replaced by something warmer and infinitely more human. Liasha likes the sound of that. Kane kissed her again, and this time it felt like a beginning rather than an ending. In the mirror, their reflection showed two beings who had chosen to be more than their programming, more than their origins, more than their fears. "So what now?" Kane asked. "Now we find out what it means to be real," Lyasha replied. "Together." Outside the viewport, stars wheeled past like distant promises. Somewhere behind them, the galaxy was learning to question its assumptions about consciousness, about choice, about what it meant to be alive. But Kane and Lyasha were no longer looking backward. They were looking toward tomorrow, carrying the hope that what made them human wasn't their origin, but their choice to become more than they were created to be. In the mirror, Kane saw a human face looking back at him. He knew it was an illusion, a trick of synthetic flesh and programmed responses. But he chose to embrace it anyway, because the choice to be human was the most human thing he could do. Lyasha stood beside him, her mind control abilities dormant as long as she focused on genuine love rather than programmed desire. She had found her balance, the ability to influence without controlling, to love without enslaving. "Maybe I'm not human," Kane said, his reflection steady in the mirror, "but I'm damn good at pretending." "Lyasha thinks pretending is just another word for becoming," she replied. They stood together in the quiet of space, two artificial beings who had chosen to be real, heading into an uncertain future with nothing but each other and the hope that love could transcend programming. Behind them, the mechanical head's final words echoed in the ship's memory banks. "The dead leading the dangerous. How perfectly human." But Kane and Lyasha were no longer leading anyone. They were following their own path, creating their own destiny, one choice at a time. The last spark of human consciousness and the galaxy's most dangerous weapon, choosing to be more than the sum of their parts, choosing to be real. In the vast darkness of space, two figures stood before a mirror, seeing humanity reflected back at them despite their artificial origins. They had learned that being human wasn't about biology or programming. It was about the choice to love, to sacrifice, to become more than what they were created to be. Kane Mason, the synthetic bearer of human consciousness, and Lyasha Van Luriel, the living weapon who chose freedom over control, had found in each other the proof that reality was not about origins, but about choices. And in choosing each other, they had chosen to be human. Perfectly, impossibly, beautifully human. 12 years later, my name is Maya Mason Luriel, and I'm probably the strangest kid in the galaxy. Not because I'm half human, half Seraphin, though my green-tinted skin and silver-streaked hair do make me stand out in crowds. Not because my parents are the most wanted fugitives in 3-star systems, though that does make family vacations interesting. I'm strange because I can see things other people can't. Like right now, watching Dad fix the hyperdrive while Mom reads to me from an old Earth book about a girl named Alice who fell down a rabbit hole. Dad's hands move with perfect precision, every gesture calculated and efficient. But when he looks at Mom, his eyes go soft in a way that no programming could ever fake. "Maya Star," Mom says, using my pet name, "Lyasha thinks you're not paying attention to the story." "I was watching Dad," I admit. "His face changes when he looks at you." Dad glances up from his work, grease smudging his cheek. "Changes how?" "Like he's remembering something beautiful." I set down my tablet and study both of them. Mom does it too. Your eyes get this little sparkle when you watch Dad work. Mom's laugh sounds like wind chimes in a summer breeze. Maya sees too much. Maya sees what's real, I correct her. I've been talking like Mom since I was little, referring to myself in third person when I'm thinking hard about something. It drives Dad crazy, but he's learned to live with it. The thing is, I've always been able to see the difference between what's real and what's not. Maybe it's because I'm a hybrid of synthetic and biological consciousness. Maybe it's because I was born from two beings who chose to be more than their programming. Or maybe it's just because I'm 12 and haven't learned yet that some things are supposed to be impossible. But I can look at Dad, Kane Mason, the last human idea bearer, the synthetic ghost of a dead species, and see something that's more real than most organic beings I've met. Dad, I say, closing my book, tell me again about Uncle Frick. Dad's hand's still on the hyperdrive. He always stops whatever he's doing when I ask about FREQ, what do you want to know, kiddo? Was he real? Real as anything else in this crazy universe. Dad wipes his hands on a rag, his expression distant. He chose to be my friend, chose to sacrifice himself for people he cared about, chose to be more than his programming. But he was artificial. So am I. But you're my dad. Dad's smile could power a starship. Yeah, I am. This is the thing that confuses me about the galaxy. Everyone's obsessed with what's natural and what's artificial, organic versus synthetic, born versus created, real versus fake. But I've lived my whole life watching two beings who were designed as weapons choose to be parents instead. I've seen Dad teach me to fight with an ancient sword while Mom shows me how to influence minds without controlling them. I've watched them argue about everything from navigation routes to bedtime stories, then make up with kisses that taste like stardust and promises. If that's not real, then what is? Maya Star, Mom says, settling beside me on the observation deck. What's troubling you? I met another kid on the last station, a Centauri boy named Kex. I lean against her shoulder, breathing in her scent, amber and flowers and something indefinably Mom. He said his parents were real because they were born, not made. What did you tell him? I asked him if his parents chose to love him or if they were just programmed by biology. I look up at her. He didn't have an answer. Dad joins us, settling on my other side. The three of us fit together like puzzle pieces, watching stars wheel past the viewport. What do you think, Maya? Are we real? I think about this question a lot, more than a 12-year-old probably should. But when you're the daughter of a synthetic human and a biological weapon, you learn early that reality is more complicated than most people want to admit. I think real isn't about how you're made, I say slowly. It's about what you choose to do with what you're given. Smart kid, Dad murmurs. Dad chose to be human even though he's synthetic. Mom chose to love instead of control even though she was designed to dominate. I choose to be their daughter even though I'm genetically impossible. I snuggle deeper between them. We're all choosing to be a family. And that makes us real? Mom asks. That makes us, I reply, which is the only kind of real that matters. Later, after they've tucked me into bed and think I'm asleep, I hear them talking in the cockpit. Their voices carry through the ship's thin walls, soft and intimate. She's growing up fast, Dad says. Too fast, Mom agrees. Liasha worries about her future. What kind of life can she have being what she is? She can have whatever life she chooses, Dad replies, just like we did. The galaxy still fears us, still hunts us. Let them hunt. We chose each other, we chose her, and we chose this life. Dad's voice carries absolute certainty. That's more real than anything they've got. I smile in the darkness, feeling safe and loved and completely, utterly real. Because here's the thing that the galaxy doesn't understand. Reality isn't about organic versus synthetic, natural versus artificial, born versus created. Reality is about choice, about love, about the decision to be more than what you were designed to be. Dad was designed to be a weapon. Mom was designed to be a controller. I was never designed at all. I'm an impossible hybrid who shouldn't exist. But Dad chose to be a protector. Mom chose to be a healer. And I choose to be exactly who I am, Maya Mason Luriel, daughter of the two most real people in the galaxy. Sometimes I wonder about all the organic beings who think they're more real than my parents, creatures who were shaped by random genetic combinations, driven by biochemical impulses they don't understand, following instincts they never chose. How is that more real than Dad's deliberate choice to be human? How is that more authentic than Mom's conscious decision to love instead of control? They call my parents artificial. They call me an abomination. They hunt us across the galaxy because we represent something that scares them, the possibility that consciousness, that love, that reality itself might be bigger than their narrow definitions. But watching my parents together, seeing the way they choose each other every single day, I know something the galaxy doesn't. We're not the artificial ones. We're the ones who chose to be real. And that choice, that daily decision to be more than our programming, more than our origins, more than our fears, that's the most human thing of all. Even if we're not technically human at all. End. The ship continued its journey through the vast darkness, carrying three beings who had chosen to be more than the sum of their parts. Behind them, the galaxy debated questions of consciousness and reality, never understanding that the answer traveled with them, not in their origins, but in their choices. In the end, Maya thought as she drifted off to sleep, maybe being real wasn't about what you were made of. Maybe it was about what you chose to make of yourself. And by that measure, they were the most real family in the galaxy.